All right, so this morning we're going to talk about one of those concepts in JavaScript that people often find a little bit confusing, but hopefully we're going to explain it in a way that means it's not too confusing. Now, that concept that we're talking about is the keyword this, sometimes referred to as lexical this, and for those of you that have already started with the interview process, then I think at least some of you have been asked that question in an interview. What is lexical this? So it used to be a very common interview question, which is partly why we're covering it, and also doing it on the last week of the course so that it gives you, hopefully it's fairly fresh in your minds when you do start going for interviews in the new year, and of course you can watch this video back. But yeah, does anyone remember a character from the Resident Evil series called Barry Burton? Anyone played Resident Evil? He was in the original one? No? But he was this character famed for saying stuff like this. Oh, I can't hear it. It's too loud.
What is this?
But basically his whole dialogue was just some terrible voice acting saying, "What is this?" And that's what he just used to walk around the whole game saying that. So that's what most people feel like with Lexical this in JavaScript. It's very soft, but I think the mic just about picked it up, so you'll probably be able to hear it on the recording. So a lot of people feel like that, but hopefully you won't end up feeling like that. So, have I lost my dev tools now? Annoying. Let's get it back. Luckily I saved them at the top. So your snippets get sorted in alphabetical order. So if you just hash them or put with numbers in front, you can easily find them again if you've got lots of snippets. Right. So the first question would be, what does this log return? Should print Father Christmas, right? However, we've used this keyword, this, in there. So what difference does that make? Why did we put it there? Why didn't we just do first name and last name? That would have also worked, right? Oops, I got reference first.
Yeah, exactly.
Say again? So yeah, firstly, what do you understand by this? You said something like it's an object. So absolutely, the keyword this should be an object.
By this we can initialize variable inside the class object.
Maybe. Not sure I fully agree with that definition. But anyway, firstly, it's an object, or it should be. We can, unfortunately, set it to other values, but that's just a bit of a quirk of JavaScript. We could set it to a number, but hopefully people won't do that in your code. So it should be an object, and it allows us to, well, first let's look at one more example. So that's fine. I mean, that just runs the function inside of user1 and spits out Father Christmas. Easy. However, what about if we had a second user? So we could have a user 2. Sorry, I got my curly brackets in the wrong place. So if we had a second user, and firstly, if I just did that, what am I going to get? Won't work. Why not? Okay, because I haven't got get full name inside of user 2. How would I create that? Do I have to just copy and paste the whole function again? I could do. There's a better way to do it. Can I just assign user2.getFullName equal to what? Yeah, let's just reuse that function. We've already defined it once. I'm not going to invoke it there and then. I don't want the result of that function, but I just want to reference it. Yeah, so I want to store the actual function definition. So that when I access user2.getFullName, I can also invoke that function. So what will I get now when I do this console log? Will I get Father Christmas? Will I get Santa Claus? Will I get something else? Not sure. Okay. So the general consensus is Santa Claus, yeah? Because user 2 yeah. So when we use the this keyword, as I said, it should be an object and it points to the object that invoked the function. So what object invoked getFullName inside of our console log? User2. Yeah, look, user2.getFullName. User2 is invoking the function. So therefore, the keyword this points to user2 in this case. And that is why we're going to get Santa Claus. Oh, it says undefined, but the console log itself does actually get Santa Claus, yeah? And then, of course, if I did user 1, it's going to be back to Father Christmas, yeah? Because this time user 1 invoked the function, so therefore lexical this points to user 1. So it can be quite useful, yeah, for reusing bits of code without having to define this function again and again. Sure, I could maybe use a module and import the function and stuff like that, but if we've just got lots of objects, then we can just define it once and reuse it as many times as we want on other objects. Okay, how about if I just do that? I don't put any object in front of getFullName. Firstly, will it work? No. So what do you think the value of this is trying to point to if I just do that, getFullName? To a function? Okay. So firstly, let's just prove that that wouldn't work. All right, getFullName is not defined. So if I wanted to define getFullName, where would I define it now? You know, we did it for user2 like this, user2.getFullName. So how would I make that function accessible just the way it's written? No, we've already got a user1.getFullName, haven't we? So Johnny's suggesting let getFullName equals parentheses. You want to do an arrow? And curly braces, okay. We're overcomplicating things, but anyway, then what? We've already got the function, right? So why are we creating a new function? Let's just again reference the same one. Yeah? So we could do that. Let getFullName equals user1.getFullName. will that function be able to get invoked now? It's got no object. Maybe, maybe not. So it ran, but we got undefined, undefined. So it was definitely trying to access this dot first name and this dot last name, but it couldn't find those properties on the object that it was looking at. So the this value was set to some object, but it definitely wasn't user 1, it definitely wasn't user 2, because they didn't invoke get full name. What did invoke get full name? Say again, Max? No, console.log is just a method, so
I think you can learn parentheses.
so we don't even need that, believe it or not. Could have just done that. So now it looks a bit similar to user2.getFullName, except this object in front of it that we assigned it to is essentially just invisible.
It's an empty object.
It's not an empty object.
It's calling the function, but the function isn't getting any variables.
When we define things just at this level, so let a equals something, what sort of scope does that a variable have? Global scope, yeah? So what's the global object in browser-based JavaScript? Window, yeah. So that is actually doing window.getFullName. Yeah, window is the global object in JavaScript. So by default, if we don't create any objects, then the this keyword is pointing at the global object. Yeah, because there's nothing nested, no nested functions. So if we had a first name, well, let's prove it. Let's do actually window.firstname. And let's do window.lastname. Give me another name for Santa Claus from around the world.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Isn't it Weihnachten's-Mann or something like that as the German one? Right?
What about the KFC Colonel?
KFC Colonel. Is he Christmassy?
I think in Japan they think he's Santa Claus.
How do you spell Colonel? I can't spell Colonel. Whatever. Something like that. Father of Christmas. We've already got Father Christmas. That'll do. Anyway, the KFC Colonel. So that's now been defined on the window object as first name and last name. So now, when I console.log get full name, what am I going to get? KFC kernel, right? Because this is pointing to the window object.
So this is this window object? I don't get it.
You don't know what the window object is? Okay. Is it best to log it or do a directory of it? Let's see. See what we get when we log it. So this is the global object in JavaScript, and it has a huge amount of properties attached to it. How do we monitor the history in the browser? Well, there's a history object. How do we monitor? So the navigator object's used quite a lot as well. The screen. Yes, we've got dimensions of my screen there. 920 by 1080. If we scroll down, we've got some events, yeah, on search, on cancel, on click. All of these built-in JavaScript or browser commands that we need access to via JavaScript, they are stored at local storage. Some of you have been using in your apps. All of these are stored on the Windows object. On the window object. So that's what it is. And by default, if we're not inside of a parent object, or we're not invoking a function like that. So if we haven't used another object to invoke a function, well then it's just going to be a window. This is going to be a window. Because it can't go up any higher. Yeah, that's as high as we can go. That is the global object in JavaScript. It is in front of everything, right? It's this the.
If you created an object called window, would you have to be like window.window?
So you want to create an object called window.
Yes. And then see what happens.
What do you think is going to happen if we do?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I'm asking other people. What do you think is going to happen?
It's gonna be a class.
What happened when we did let user2 equals an object? Where did user2 get stored? Globally. What does globally mean? It got attached to the window object. So if we do let window, then you're quite right. We're going to end up with window.window.
So what should we do, like, if we declare any variables or anything, and that goes to the window, right?
Yeah, when we declare any global variables, they get attached to the window object. So do you think this is a good practice or not, to define global things? In general, no, right? Because we're polluting the global scope and we're ending up with a bigger and a bigger window object, which could slow down your application over time.
We're gonna see nice error.
You think you're going to see a nice error? So I am. Okay, let's see. So if I console.log window.window.name, then it should access this. Let's do that again, because I still had the window object displayed in the console.
No, I mean.
Oh, I cannot read property name of undefined.
I mean about this one.
So window.window was not defined, hey? So it doesn't let us.
Yes. So we got this error.
Interesting. Yeah. But if we do window.user 1, still not defined. So has it done it further down on the document? No. Okay. Not a good example. I think because we've got this little block scope here, it hasn't attached it to the window object. But anyway, we're getting distracted. So mainly the thing to remember about this is that it points to the object that invoked the function. So here, that would be window. Here, that would be user1. And then if we did user2.getFullName, it would be user2. Yeah? So now this is pointing to user2 because it invoked the function. That's pretty much all there is to it. We will look this afternoon at arrow functions a bit and see how that changes things, but in general, that is it.
How far does that go? So if you've got, say, 3 layers, if you're 3 levels down, and it hasn't got to this, that level, oh no,
You want some? So you want a bit further down? So like if you had this defined inside another object, so we've got a user2 and a user3 is inside user2, something like that? So you want me to get rid of it out of there, so we've only got it once? Let's get rid of the kernel. So how would I give user1 now access to the last name, the getFullName function? Yeah, user1 dot get full name is where? User3. Yeah, user2 dot user3 dot get full name. Cool. Then I can log it out. User1, right? Okay, what am I going to log this time? So we've got 3 options: Father Christmas, Santa Claus, Papa Noel, or I guess the 4th option, undefined or other. Yeah, Father Christmas, right? Because look, it's just dependent on what function invoked get full name. Doesn't matter where it was defined initially, because we've used the keyword this. And this can be changed by JavaScript dependent on what object called the function. So if we run that, we should get Father Christmas. And we do. Because that is the value of first name and last name inside of user1. Yeah, okay. There are a few little catches, right? And we're gradually talk about them, and we'll definitely talk about arrow functions this afternoon. But just remember that arrow functions were brought in to make this easier to work with, or to be able to change the value of this easier, rather than make it any harder. So, as long as
always the object that calls it, then you have to worry about
Nope, not really, no. And then if you wanted, though, to, I guess, not have to do this each time, to actually reference a new object with the property, then there are a few methods available in JavaScript that let us change the value of let's call this on the fly. Yeah. So even let's move get full name back, because I think it's easier to access there, because it's only alright, let's not even put it inside any object. Let's just stick it out there. So let's make get full name a function. Actually, no, we better put it in an object, because otherwise it's available globally anyway, which doesn't really make sense, right? Okay, so we've got our get full name function inside of user1. And then what I want to do is I want to return Santa Claus. So I want to have user2 as my first name and last name, but I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to reference the property. I essentially just want to do a console.log with user1.getFullName, because that's where the function's stored, but I want it to return Santa Claus. So in other words, I want this to point to user2. Do you know of any ways to do that in JavaScript? Bind would be one of them. I'm going to leave that to last if that's okay, because that's slightly different than the other two methods. But bind is definitely one of them. There's no problem, but we just want to make this, the keyword this, point to the user2 object. And at the moment, where's it pointing? It's pointing to user1. Yeah, because user1 is invoking that function. So how do I say, use the function inside of user1 and call it from there, but use the this value as user2. So in other words, I want this to be user2 and the other this to be user2. Call is another one. Call and apply. Yep, call, apply and bind. They are your three methods.
higher order functions?
No, not needed. So we just chain on a call method,
So what this means?
and the call method takes a couple of arguments, whatever we want this object to be, and then any additional arguments. So if we want to set user2 as our value of this, we just stick user2 inside of there. Simple as that. So call is a method, yeah, that's why it's .call, open brackets, and it's a function method, so it's attached to every function. Because get full name is a function, we can chain on a .call on the end. So now we should end up with what? Santa Claus, yeah? Oh, what have I done wrong? Missed some brackets or something? Is 2.get user1.get full name .call is not a function. It's because I did that, right? I invoked the function before chaining on .call. My mistake. So I was getting the result of the get full name function. So we get the function reference, chain a call on the end, and use user2 as the this value. And we get Santa Claus. If we wanted to get Papa Noel, exactly, yeah. So now we're changing the this value to this one. To that one, I should say.
Papa Noel.
Papa Noel.
So this is from where? From Finland or from I don't know.
I think it's
Spain, yeah? Because Noel.
I think also in France, right? They say Papa Noel. I'm not sure. All these terms now, they're just sort of passed around, aren't they? All around Europe, so most people know most of them. So doing it this way as well can give us a bit of, well, we could have done it the other way, to be fair, but how would I now have or pass a greeting to one of our variations of Father Christmas? So in other words, I want some sort of greeting in here, and let's say I want to pass in my value of the greeting, and then followed by the name. Where can I put that value of greeting? Yeah, simple as that. So with call, it just takes an additional argument. I suppose that's what he would say to us, but never mind, it's good enough. And now, what should we console.log? What's going to appear in our console? Ho ho ho, Papa Noel, yeah? Good stuff. How about 2 arguments? I can end with a catchphrase. Where would I put that one? So I can have multiple ones? Any Father Christmas catchphrases? Says that a lot, right? See if it works. Let's make let's make Santa Claus say it. Yep. So that works. So we can just pass in as many arguments as we want to call. And even if we passed in a third one, then it will still work, but we just haven't used that data anywhere. Yeah, there's no reference to it, so it doesn't get spat out of our get full name function. But it's not going to break it by putting any extra arguments in here. Yeah. However, if we only had one argument, oops, missing titles there. Oh yeah, I haven't closed my function. So we do get undefined then, yeah, because we're referencing it here, and phrase is undefined because we haven't passed in the data. If the phrase is always the same, then of course you can do default values, all stuff like that, right? Yeah, still works. Any questions on cool? Can we do what? Yeah. How about if we passed in one of Santa's little helpers, an elf? What's going to happen now? Huh? No, so what was the first argument of cool? It's what we're setting the value of this to be, yeah? So the value of this is now that object. Does that make sense? No? Yeah, okay. Cool. Let me get rid of the phrase so we don't get any undefines. Actually, I'll leave it up there and I'll just get rid of it there for now. Cool. So what should this spit out? So we're invoking the function from user1. We're then calling it, changing the value of this to this object, and then passing in a greeting. So what are we going to get? Ho ho ho, elf undefined. Nice one, Max. Yeah. Why is it undefined? Well, there was no last name. This was set to this object, and it doesn't have a last name property in it. It doesn't automatically then just go looking for the nearest last name. It doesn't go up the scope chain at all. You've fixed the value of this. So it will only look for last name on this object here, that object there. Good stuff. If I do what? Bind this in the last name. So maybe you're not understanding how bind works. So I'll come to that last of all. But we're not just going to bind the last name. We'd have to do it separately. We couldn't do it all in one like that. We could do something like that, yeah. How about apply? Apply takes an array. What do you mean by that? You're right, but what do you mean? Is there any array there? Nope. So therefore that's going to fail, right? Create list from array like called on non-object, which is a bit weird. Error. But what it means is that these arguments here any additional arguments to apply need to be inside an array. It's just how it works, yeah? So it's very, very similar, almost identical to call. However, call takes a comma separated list and apply takes an array of arguments. That's really easy to remember because some people get mixed up, right? But the call method, so is comma separated list of args. And then apply is an array of arguments. Why is that easy to remember? Because of the alliteration, right? C for comma, A for array. So that's how you're going to remember it. If anyone asks you what's the difference between call and apply in an interview, and that is another common question, then you shouldn't get them mixed up, right? They both change the value of this, or they both allow you to change the value of this keyword, but call takes a comma separated list of additional arguments, apply takes an array of additional arguments. Simple as that. Yeah, so if we had additional things here, like previously we had our phrase, Merry Christmas, whoops, Christmas, then as long as it's in an array, this is still going to work. The first argument is an object. No, any additional arguments. So call and apply are exactly the same. We give a value of this, and then additional arguments, apply an array, call, comma separated list. So that's going to work. So if I changed it up here again to reflect my phrase, we can just prove that. Alright. Oops. Where was I? That one. So we still get undefined because of course we don't have a last name listed in there, but everything else is being captured. If I now change it to bind, what happens? Firstly, bind's more like call, so we should have a comma separated list rather than an array. But even if we do that, what's going to happen? So you think it's just going to be the same as call? Another suggestion is somehow it's going to grab a last name from user 1 because that was what we initially invoked it in with, maybe. That was Johnny's suggestion. None of them are correct that we've had so far, so it's not going to do that. Instead, we're going to get this. A function is returned. So it's just returned the function that we have here. But what it's done is it's bound this value to this object. So we don't directly return anything that involves bind. What we do is we take that out. I'm just going to get rid of the Merry Christmas for now. You'll see why later, hopefully. And we assign that into a variable. This sounds a bit kinky, but let bound elf equal user1.getFullName bind, and then we've bound the elf object to this. Then what we can do is we can just invoke the bound elf later on. So I give it a last name to get rid of undefines. This is a feral elf, or Will Ferrell played elf, right? So interpret that however you want. And then we should now get what? So previously we had a reference to the function that was returned by bind. We set that in a variable and invoked it. So we get ho ho ho, elf, feral. Oh, and we still get Merry Christmas because of this phrase up here, but let me get rid of that. So now we just get ho ho ho, elf, feral. Oh, have I still got it in there as well? Sorry. Nice. What's that? Sorry?
So, what we've done with bind, we can get the same thing with just change bind to call and apply.
We just changed bind to call and apply. No, because call actually invokes the function. Apply invokes the function. So bound elf is now going to be a string, and when we try and invoke it, we're going to get bound elf is not a function. See? So bind just creates a reference to the function, whereas call and apply actually invoke the function, but with a different value of the this keyword. So now we're going to get ho 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 Santa Claus. Yeah. And then the only difference as well with bind is that we have two places that we can put our arguments. So we could put our arguments there as a comma separated list. So maybe I want to say my Merry Christmas phrase there. Then I could also put an argument in there. Which one comes first? Does ho 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 now get assigned to greeting or to phrase? So in other words, does this take the position of the first parameter, or does this take the position of the first parameter? What has precedence? Which one? You think Merry Christmas takes precedence, takes the first position? Because you're declaring it before. Makes sense. So what do you expect this to return, Johnny? Yep. Do we agree with that or disagree? Agree? Yeah, you're right. So this is the first argument. So that gets assigned to greeting. And this was passed in later. So that takes any additional parameters there. Any questions? No? Yeah, go on.
When you use bind,
Yep.
that creates a function.
Yep, it creates it creates a reference to the function, but with a specified value of this. I mean, this isn't going to work, but for example, if you did that, then it's going to say it's not a function because it's looking for it here and it can't find it. It's interesting actually. See if we do it. So if we put a bound elf property here, are we going to get hello or are we going to get... No, in fact that won't work, will it? Yeah, so it's still not a function. But if we had... this is weird, but... So don't do this, this is very confusing. But what do we think that will return? Will that use user 1 or will it use user 2? Does take user 1 because user 1 is still invoking it and therefore it's going for that one there. Greetings not being passed in, so it's just pointless to do that, right? You're creating a brand new function. I guess you could do that. User 1 dot without the let, and that should overwrite it. As I say, very confusing. So now even though we're inside of user 1 and we've called user 1 dot bound elf, we get the value from user 2 because we've bound it up here and then overwritten that function there with the bound version. But that is quite confusing, yeah? I guess it could be useful if you had a function here and the data for this function come from various other objects. You could maybe use it that way, so that you never wanted this to point to user 1's object. That could work. But it's a bit of a weird pattern, to be honest. I wouldn't do it like that. I would just create the new function specific to what you wanted. So this is now no longer the bound elf, is it? This is the bound user 2. And then you could call the bound user 2 just on its own. So it's not too bad. Just remember that this should refer to an object and you can change, well, and it always refers to the object that invoked the function unless you use call, apply or bind to change the value of Lexical list. Is that you on or a question, John? No? Unfortunately, this is, I guess, the one edge case or a horrible edge case that you got in JavaScript, Max, is we could just do something horrible like that and we don't pass an object in and we actually bind the value of this to be a number, and it does let us do that, unfortunately. And then when we try and get this message, we're just gonna get some undefines. Yeah, because the number has no property of first name and last name. So yeah, unfortunately we can pass non-object values in there, but please don't do it. Just pass in objects that you want to use with the properties that you're looking for in your function, right? First name and last name, and then you can set them to whatever you want. You see that sometimes? What do you think that does? What? The KFC kernel's back. So what did we say the default value of this was? If we're not contained in any other objects, it's just going to be the window. So that's what that's doing. It's scratching out user 1 and saying just use the window object. So KFC kernel is still stored in the window object, because anything that's global persists. All right, it's another one of the reasons we don't use the global scope too much. So the only way I can get rid of that is I manually delete the first name and the last name from the global scope, or just shut my browser down and open it again, right? So I refresh the whole window object. It's using buying good practice. You're asking this in the context of React now, are you, I suppose? Because you've seen it using there, or just... Yeah, I mean, I don't really use bind that often, but it is better, I suppose, if you envisage using this bound function multiple times, right? Because with call, we're just going to get the result straight away. Yeah, so all we're going to get out of this is the KFC kernel. And that's all we got the opportunity to do. Yeah, that's all we can do, just log the same thing again and again and again. However, if I want to have some different greetings each time from Santa Claus, then what I could do is bind that function. And he always says Merry Christmas. Oops, sorry. But then I can pass in different phrases. So sometimes he might say, oh, not who, but ho ho ho. Other times he might say, what would you like for Christmas? Yeah, you see? So now we've just got one bound function, but if we do have a phrase in here somewhere, you know what, let's just get rid of Merry Christmas. He's going to ask himself what he wants for Christmas, but see the last one, we've now got, what would you like for Christmas? However, this one, it's ho ho ho, yeah? So it's the same bound function, but we're able to pass in different parameters to it. That's not as easy to do with call or apply, because we've got to essentially write the whole thing again, because it just returns the function immediately. Yeah, so bind's really useful if you declare a function somewhere else and you want to reuse it multiple times again in various parts of your application. So yeah, I think it's useful. And as for call and apply, just go with one, but be aware that the other exists. Yeah, just keep it consistent, because there's no real reason to use both in your application. They exist for historical reasons, when it wasn't that easy to change between a comma-separated list and arrays. Now that's quite easy through what new operator? Rest and spread, yeah. So now we've got rest and spread, we can switch really easily between comma-separated lists and arrays. However, in initial versions of JavaScript, we didn't have that, but we did have call and apply. Okay. Leave it there. All right, thanks very much. And then Ricardo also did a workshop on this, very, very similar. And yeah, it's one of his favourite interview questions that he got asked a lot, and also he used to ask his students. So he's got a really good take on it that's worth a watch.
Well, thanks, Graham. I understood that.
I'm glad you understood it. I hope a few other people did as well.